It took 8 long days for Hillary Clinton to finally face the press about exclusively using private email as Secretary of State, and the reporters' questions were direct and sometimes deflected.
Madam Secretary, State Department rules at the time you were Secretary were perfectly clear that if a State Department employee was going to be using private email, that employee needed to turn those emails over to the State Department to be preserved on government computers. Why did you not do that?
First, the laws and regulations in effect when I was Secretary of State allowed me to use my email for work. That is undisputed.
Mainstream media reviews were almost all negative, perhaps exemplified by this New York Post cover, "Deleter of the Free World." Conservative pundits, not surprisingly, ripped Hillary's explanation that she used one phone and one private server for her convenience.
Convenience? Are you kidding? Any 10th grader can set up multiple email accounts on a single handheld device. Does she think the American people are that stupid?
A few liberal commentators defended the former First Lady, but many were skeptical, even sharply critical.
Secretary Clinton did everything right today, but deal with the problem. She basically said, trust me, trust her not to have deleted emails dealing with policy, politics, or whatever.
Hillary Clinton did exactly what I think she had to do, addressed using her personal email while Secretary of State for the first time. I think Hillary Clinton met the test, cleared the beach, and answered a lot of questions.
Joining us now to examine the media's role in driving this controversy, Kathleen Parker, syndicated columnist and Pulitzer Prize winner, Christina Bellantoni, editor-in-chief of Roll Call, and Joe Trippi, Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor. Kathleen Parker, 98%, according to my scientific survey, of the assessments I've seen of Hillary's presser were negative, including you, including Maureen Dowd this morning in the New York Times, many big newspapers, liberal commentators. Why is it that almost no one in the press seems to be giving her the benefit of the doubt?
Well, she was not completely forthcoming. It was clear that she had her 4 points she was going to get through. She didn't allow a whole lot of questions. There were, I think, maybe 4 of those. And so it wasn't exactly a complete act of transparency. And I think the media are certainly well aware of that. But also the media come to this episode, really, the next in the series of Clinton and Company, with a great memory. And that is that the Clintons have always been a little bit too secretive, a little bit untransparent. And even though you could find a lot of reasons to understand that, even justify it and explain it, it doesn't work with the media because that's what we do. You know, we ask the questions, we need the answers.
Well, last week you sat next to Hillary at an event. Was she famously wary?
Oh, my gosh.
Of you as a member of the press?
Not at all. Not at all. She could not have been more charming, warm, and appropriately flattering. So, right. No, she's a very gracious person in person.
Christina, one problem with Hillary Clinton's answers is, in addition to raising more questions, is that the questions that she didn't like, she just deflected. She didn't answer them.
Well, right. Her attitude in this press conference was very much irritation with the press, and in some ways that highlighted the circus that this has become. I mean, I thought about bringing a prop to the show today, but I wasn't sure how it would look on camera, of like one of those wind-up cars that you pull back and then let go, and that's exactly what the press has been ready to do, right? She's not officially a candidate yet, even though we've known she's going to run for years now.
When you say circus, it sounds like you're suggesting that perhaps some media behavior has been a little clownish?
Sure. But it is a frenzy, and it is in part because of a history of secrecy. There are things the press wants to be digging on. You hear all of the time from my colleagues in the media, people are bored with the story, or they know everything they're ever going to know about Hillary and Bill Clinton, and here's something they don't. So now there's new sort of chum in the water. Well,
one of the questions she deflected, for example, was about the foreign government donations to the Clinton Foundation while she was Secretary of State. She just didn't answer it. Joe, you have the AP and Gawker suing for these records now, the press picking apart her answers, but some pundits also saying she didn't seem likable. So how much of this is just kind of chip on the shoulder territory toward Hillary Clinton?
Well, I don't know. Look, this is self-inflicted. She could have made a different choice. She said as much, and so every one of these candidates, assuming I assume like everybody else she is, every one of them's going to go through this. I mean, this is the gauntlet. They're all going to be questioned about something that they made a bad judgment on or made a bad choice on.
And perfectly legitimate in your view?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. That the same questions are. I mean, on different subjects maybe.
You're saying this is just the beginning.
Else. And if you can't make it through it, if what some of the pundits were saying about, gosh, she wasn't personal, she didn't connect. We've seen those charges against her before. She actually came back from those kinds of things in New Hampshire in 2008.
What's fascinating to me is the way this is now turning into an attack on the press by Hillary Clinton's allies. Bill Maher the other day complaining about the stupid infantile press. And here's Rachel Maddow on her MSNBC show. Let's take a look.
The media noise and static and nonsense around her is so loud. It's very hard to have effective reporting that people might actually care about what she'd be like as a national leader. And seeing the scrum this week and a lot of the stupidity in the coverage around this issue, I worry about whether or not we're going to be well served by a Beltway press corps that doesn't know how to talk about either Bill or Hillary Clinton.
Nonsense, stupidity. That kind of suggests it's almost a non-story.
Well, speaking of convenience, I mean, blame the media, right? I'm not one to always defend the media by any means, but you know, this is a problem. It may not be an insurmountable problem, but you always can have the questions about what about those deleted emails? What was in them, and who decided? You know how they did it? It was with keywords. They typed in keywords to identify emails that seemed to pertain to State Department business. Well, what were those keywords, and what keywords were left out? You know, was Benghazi a keyword? I mean, who knows? So
it all depends on the meaning of the word keyword. It is a media frenzy. The question is whether it's justified. So we saw earlier, Christina, James Carville making these sort of wild charges against the New York Times, walking back the story. That's absolutely not true. There was some criticism that the original story could have been more specific about the regulations involved. Spreading right-wing talking points. Is that a fair charge?
But this is not a new charge. I mean, I've had those charges leveled at me by people that work at every level of campaign on both sides, whether I'm spreading a certain side's talking point or certain side's talking point, because that's an easy attack on the press when it's not something that you like. This is an issue that people deserve to know information that was deleted. They deserve to know things that have to do with her government work. And in the end, we're not going to get the entire picture. And these questions deserve to be asked. But is the press irresponsible sometimes? Is this an infantile game? Sure. A lot of times. And I think most of the reporters that are out there covering the presidential campaign want to have important substantive work out there. And there are many people doing that. It is very difficult in the media environment. It is very difficult when you have campaigns that don't want to talk to you, right? You end up chasing the story of the day.
Well, NBC's Andrew Mitchell did push back against Carville in that interview for saying some of those things, but...
Well, I have to say, I don't think it's helpful to Hillary Clinton to have these faces come forward yet again. You know, Carville and Begala. I think Paul Begala's probably said something by now.
Oh, he has?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then Lanny Davis. I mean, I know all these people. I like them. I'm not criticizing them, but it doesn't. You know, it just brings back.
It seems like the scandal crew from the 90s.
Exactly.
I'm saving this one for you, Trippi. Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island telling the New York Times that journalists are pursuing a ridiculous story, and he won't indulge their bizarre fetish by commenting on it.
Look, I just think that that's not going to make it as a comeback on this stuff. She's got to go through this. The one thing I think that I really do fault the press on is this inability to explain to people that you're never going to be able to get to the facts on this because of the way the rules and policies, everything, the practices that people participate in government these days is so behind the times in terms of technology. You used to be able to, you couldn't call anybody on a government phone.
Right. Yeah. So you go to a separate office.
Right. These guys would get up and walk across the street and call outside. Well, guess what? It's all here now. Yeah. And on this is a private account and a public account. And if what she was doing,
you're saying it's hard for the press to.
No, she's emailing on a personal account to another person's personal account. That was never going to be on a government server. We don't own that part of the server. It doesn't work that way.
But come back to this bizarre fetish charge, because it makes it sound like journalists are into whips and chains and stuff when it comes to Hillary.
Well, look, the Clintons are always going to be news, and Hillary Clinton is, let's face it, she's running for President of the United States. She was Secretary of State, and I can, from my personal point of view, I would love to have a personal server, and I want absolute privacy. I don't want anyone to know what I'm thinking ever, but I wasn't Secretary of State, and I'm not running for president, and you just simply, the media has got to pursue the story. Now, do they have to just, does it have to be, as you say, chum in the water and just this incessant feeding frenzy? No.
We have one volume, and it's usually too loud, but how much of this has to do with, Kathleen, you touched on this, with the wounds of Whitewater and the view in the media, the consensus that formed in the 90s that she was secretive and cutting corners, and whether now that furthers the portrait.
It is one thing. I mean, we all know in politics that when something touches on an issue that voters already think about you, that it's more effective. I mean, that's one of the things that happened to Mitt Romney with the 47% comments. He was already viewed as possibly out of touch, so this is an issue. People know the Clintons have been secretive along their history, but at the same time, a whole new crop of voters is coming up. People that weren't even born when Whitewater was going on or weren't paying attention because they were children. Right. Now, of course, that's all going to get resurfaced again, but that's not how people vote.
Before we go, the conventional wisdom is that the mainstream media are instinctively and reflexively unfair to Republicans. Hillary Clinton's a liberal Democrat, and she seems to have most of the press aligned against her. Isn't that a little bizarre?
No. Look, my own read is the press is unfair to most of the candidates and everyone. They're in fact, I should say, take out the word most. They're unfair to everybody.
This is part of running for president.
Or
governor or mayor.
All of this is part of it, running for president. Every one of the Republicans is going to go through it. Martin O'Malley and any of the Democrats that enter the race are going to go through it. And either you survive it or you're laying on the battlefield.
Wounded and somebody has to come take you off.
Carries you off. Right. Usually someone like me.
But that's part of your process. You know, this is a test always to see how do you respond to tension, to conflict, and to being attacked.
And even if that tension and inquisition is unfair, it again is a marathon that you have to be able to overcome if you're going to reach high office. By the way, good Time magazine cover story on this whole mess. If we could put that up, Hillary Clinton, I think, portrayed as a she-devil because I know we've got it coming here. Her shadow, her silhouette, look at that at the top. Those are horns. Time magazine says, just a coincidence. We do this to everybody.
Oh my goodness.
I think somebody must have seen that in advance.